We know that you're getting ready for your fantasy football drafts. This is one of those things where whether you are a big-time fantasy person or not, you're probably still involved in some sort of fantasy league out there. We talked a couple of weeks ago about alternate ways that you can get involved in fantasy. Best ball is a new way to, I shouldn't say new. What I should say is a gaining in popularity way of playing fantasy sports, in which all you do is draft, and then you don't have to worry about anything after that, right? If you hate the waiver wire, if you hate the whole trades, if you hate all that stuff, trying to figure out who you're going to play, you have that as an option as well. We just kind of wanted to look here, if you're going in, which guys we like, which guys we think are a little bit better than others. We have differing opinions on who's at the top here. I went Bijan Robinson and then Christian McCaffrey. You started off Christian McCaffrey and then actually went Saquon Barkley. Bijan Robinson coming in the third spot. I just assumed also PPR leagues because most people are playing PPR leagues at this point. Like, if you're not, then Bijan Robinson would not be number one for me. Christian McCaffrey might not even be number two for me if you're not playing in that, because again, I think that there's a realistic scenario, as we've talked about several different times, where they try to limit how much Christian McCaffrey's on the field, specifically if games get out of hand. Like, I don't think, like we saw last year, he's going to be out there running, taking unnecessary hits and running the ball whenever they're up, double digits and things like that. But my kind of top three: Bijan, McCaffrey, then Jonathan Taylor, then Saquon Barkley, where you went McCaffrey, Barkley, Robinson, and then Taylor. Yeah,
Taylor, because it's PPR, Taylor hits number 4 for me. He's going to catch the ball the least of those three guys that we talked about. I don't think it's I understand we're going to use McCaffrey less. I still think the gap between him and Bijan is enough, even with less usage, that he is still the number one guy I want in a PPR league, especially when we haven't seen this Falcons offense. We saw Arthur Smith's version of this Falcons offense last year. It wasn't great, right? You get Kirk Cousins in. I expect you're going to see Bijan used more in the run game. I expect you're going to see him catch more balls out of the backfield. I know what Christian McCaffrey is going to do in a lot of ways. And so I felt that was a pretty easy one there for me. And Saquon at 2, I just see so much of Saquon and McCaffrey as a parallel, where we saw McCaffrey struggle with injury at Carolina. All of a sudden he goes to San Francisco, runs behind a better offensive line, and he becomes the man in fantasy football. I think Saquon has that opportunity to do the same thing here. This floor probably a little bit lower here for Saquon than Bijan, but I think the ceiling extremely high for Saquon this year.
Yeah, it's interesting when you look at, there is a market over at DraftKings where it's basically player to score 10+ regular season rushing touchdowns. So not, where you don't factor in receiving. And you see that even Christian McCaffrey still minus 185, right, in that market. And you start to go down. There's only 2 actual running backs that are minus money out there, and then everyone else is plus money, Derrick Henry being the other. But then you get into, you start to look, and this is just the way the market differs, right? Like, we're talking strictly rushing touchdowns. We're not talking about receiving touchdowns, and also the way that these offenses may or may not perform. So you get to you're like, oh, okay, well then obviously you're getting to Saquon, or obviously you're getting to, no, it's actually David Montgomery, who is the next running back that you're going to find at plus 120, Jonathan Taylor plus 150. Then you get to Raheem Mostert, a guy that, again, if we're ranking fantasy running back, nowhere near, the top 10, but we're just talking about teams, how often they're going to get in scoring position, and how often they may or may not go about, getting in the end zone.
Yeah, I mean, the one scare I have with Saquon at number 2 is Jalen Hurts.
Yeah.
The tush push.
Yes.
What are we going to do here? Is it going to be a bunch of...
Minus 115, by the way,
in that market. He should be.
Yes, I mean, to score 10+ rushing touchdowns.
We obviously, we're switching the center, Kelsey out there.
Yeah.
Are we going to still have the same effectiveness? Well, you're still going to get the same opportunity. Like, every time from the one, I expect you're going to see the tush push as the first play that they run for a while. So it's hard to back guys like Barkley, and I think that is one of the big concerns about having him at 2 years. What touchdown production are you going to get? I think he's going to have a phenomenal season. I wouldn't be shocked if he still gets the ball from the 2, from the 3, places like that, versus the 1 I think is going to be up in the air. The bottom half of this list I think is very interesting.
It is.
Because that's where you do see some major differences in us. And I realize I'm lower on Breece Hall and really Jets fantasy prospects than a lot of people.
Look,
and we'll get to that in wide receiver too.
I put him at 5, you put him at 6, and here's the thing for me. This is one of those, and I'll, again, fully admit, this is where I just had to go on projections and stuff from other people, because I also, as everyone who's listened to any of our content, I am a little bit lower on the Jets than market, but everyone assumes, and this is everybody, smart people across all the industry, that Breece Hall is going to get a ton of action. And we are betting, and we're not only betting, but we're drafting, if we're talking about fantasy, on opportunity. And everybody has him getting a massive amount of opportunity. And so even if I don't think that this team is going to be as good as everyone thinks, you just can't argue with the amount of touches that everyone thinks he's going to get.
It's not a great offensive line.
Yeah.
Defense is very good. You would expect that they're going to be in a positive game state for him to run the ball quite a bit. But you've talked about this. Aaron Rodgers plays slow.
Yeah.
How many offensive plays are we going to see? I think he's very interesting. I also don't see him as a big guy catching the ball out of the backfield as well versus what I think he's going to get on the ground. So that's a knock on him, and that's why I have Gibbs above him. Jahmyr Gibbs, again, he may not get all the touchdowns. He breaks 20-yard runs all the time. He's going to be used through the air. They're talking about having him in the slot. The PPR aspect matters quite a bit. For me, the big difference was Alvin Kamara. I got him on this list at 8. He did have games where he had double-digit targets.
Yes.
If Carr stays as the quarterback, he's checked down Charlie. He loves Kamara out of the backfield. I feel like he is being drafted too low in PPR leagues specifically because of what he brings from a reception standpoint.
The only guy that was on your list that wasn't on mine, the guy that was on my list, not on yours, was James Cook. I had him down at 9. Again, at the end of the day, the Bills are still going to score points, and like now whether the defense holds up or not, that's to be determined. So we're going in, James Cook, the opportunity is at least going to be there.
I think he is going to be the third option in the red zone. I love Ray Davis, running back out of Kentucky, and we've heard James Cook having fumble issues as well in training camp right now. I think Ray Davis has a shot to take this job from him by the end of the season.
We both have Isiah Pacheco inside there. We both have Derrick Henry inside there. We both also have Kyren Williams in there as well inside of our top 10. All of these guys, and listen, Derrick Henry, if you're in a PPR league, I know you're going to be like, dude, he doesn't catch the ball. But for the first time for the Ravens ever, it looks like they might actually have a bell cow back. And so he's just going to score a ton of touchdowns.
Yeah, red zone should be phenomenal for him, running behind a good offensive line. And you got to worry about Jackson.